Officer Jake Thompson had always prided himself on his instincts. After 2 decades on the force, he believed he had seen it all. But today, in the sun-drenched streets of Maplewood, Ohio, he was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Maplewood was the kind of neighborhood where the lawns were manicured, children played freely, and the police presence was more of a reassurance than a necessity. As Thompson cruised down the street, one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the radio, he felt a sense of control. He was tough, direct, and didn't take excuses. In his mind, he was the guardian of justice. As he turned a corner, he spotted her, a woman in her late 30s, jogging with a confident stride. Her athletic gear was top-notch, and her earbuds were firmly in place, lost in her own rhythm. She looked like she belonged here, but something about her made Thompson uneasy. Perhaps it was the way she didn't acknowledge his presence as he passed. Most people at least offered a nod to a police cruiser. He pulled over, tires crunching against the pavement. Stepping out, he placed a hand on his duty belt, ensuring it was noticed. His eyes locked onto her as she slowed her pace, yanking out one earbud, her breath steady but controlled. "Is something wrong, officer?" she asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Where are you coming from?" Thompson's voice was steady, laced with authority. "Home. Just getting in my run," she replied, tilting her head slightly. "Where's home?" he pressed, feeling a sense of unease grow. "A couple blocks down," she answered, her expression shifting slightly. "Got ID on you?" The question hung in the air, and Thompson could see the change in her demeanor. "Are you stopping me for jogging in broad daylight?" she asked, incredulous. He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. "Let's just call someone who actually enforces the law correctly," she said, reaching for her phone. "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again." "Show me some identification," he said, stepping closer. Her fingers tightened around her phone, and Thompson felt the tension escalate. "I'm not required to carry ID while jogging," she stated firmly. Thompson shifted his stance, feeling the weight of her defiance. "I'm investigating suspicious activity," he said, his voice clipped. "What activity?" she challenged. He hesitated, caught off guard by her confidence. "You were running past a house with a high-value vehicle in the driveway. Jogging past a parked car is a crime now," she shot back, disbelief evident in her tone. "You're refusing to identify yourself," he said, frustration creeping in. "I'm refusing to be harassed," she retorted, her voice steady. Thompson felt a fire ignite within him. He took a step closer, his authority being challenged in front of onlookers. "Ma'am, you're resisting my investigation," he said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm resisting nothing." "You're abusing your badge," she replied, her hand twitching near her phone. In a split second, Thompson reacted, grabbing her wrist and pulling her arm behind her back. The metal cuffs glinted in the sunlight as he secured them. "What the hell?" she shouted, struggling against his grip. "You're under arrest for obstruction," he said, the words automatic, as if rehearsed. People stopped and stared. A man on his porch pulled out his phone, recording the scene. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice strained but controlled. Thompson tightened the cuffs, ignoring the growing crowd. "I'm investigating," he repeated, but doubt began to creep in. A voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me, officer, what's going on here?" A well-dressed man in his 50s approached, an air of authority surrounding him. "Sir, please stand back," Thompson said, trying to maintain control. The man didn't budge. "I asked what's going on." "She was being uncooperative," Thompson replied, his voice firm but faltering. "Uncooperative?" the man echoed, disbelief in his tone. "You arrested her for jogging?" "She refused to comply with an investigation," Thompson insisted, but his confidence was waning. The man turned to the jogger. "What happened?" "She stopped me while I was jogging, asked for ID, and now here we are," she explained, her voice steady. The man's expression darkened. "You arrested her for jogging?" Thompson felt the weight of the crowd's gaze. "Dispatch. I have a 1015 female suspect refusing to identify herself," he said into his radio. But the words fell hollow. The jogger laughed bitterly. "You really think this is going to go your way?" Before Thompson could respond, another voice broke through the tension. "Officer Thompson, what's going on here?" Captain Mark Reynolds, Thompson's commanding officer, stepped out of an unmarked vehicle, his expression furious. "Uncuff her," Reynolds ordered, his voice cutting through the air. Thompson hesitated, confusion washing over him. "Sir, she refused to identify herself," he stammered. Reynolds stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "That's because she doesn't have to." Thompson's heart raced as he processed the situation. "Who is she?" he asked, but deep down he already knew. "My name is Chief Angela Roberts," she said, her voice sharp as steel. The realization hit Thompson like a freight train. He had just arrested his boss, the highest-ranking officer in the department. "Uncuff her now," Reynolds commanded again, his tone brooking no argument. Thompson's hands fumbled as he released the cuffs. Stepping back as Chief Roberts rubbed her wrists, the red marks a stark reminder of his mistake. The crowd was silent, the tension palpable. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Reynolds said, his tone softer now. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she replied, but her eyes held a fire that Thompson couldn't ignore. "Do you even know who you just put in handcuffs?" Reynolds asked, his voice rising. The weight of those words settled heavily on Thompson's shoulders. "I didn't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Chief Roberts stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You think your badge gives you the right to stop whoever you want? You think jogging while black is a crime?" Thompson opened his mouth to respond but found no words. "You made a decision today," she continued, her voice steady. "You decided I didn't belong here. You didn't know who I was, and that was all you needed to see me as a suspect." Thompson felt the heat rise in his cheeks, shame flooding through him. "How many others have you done this to?" she asked, her question cutting deeper than any physical blow. Reynolds stepped in, his voice firm. "Sergeant Thompson, you're relieved of duty until further notice. Hand over your badge and gun." The words stung, and Thompson's fingers hovered over his belt. Slowly, he unclipped his badge and placed it in Reynolds' waiting palm, followed by a sidearm. The crowd remained silent, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. Chief Roberts watched him, disappointment etched on her face. "You need to take a long, hard look at yourself, officer, because after today, everything changes." Thompson didn't respond. What could he say? The realization of his actions hung heavy in the air. As he stepped away, the cameras continued to roll, the whispers of the crowd echoing in his ears. He sat in his car, staring at the steering wheel, the engine off. The weight of the cuffs he had placed on her wrists lingered in his mind. Looking up, he saw Chief Roberts speaking with Reynolds, her body language controlled but fierce. For the first time in years, Thompson felt uncertain. He had prided himself on being a man of the law, believing he was fair and just. But today, his instinct had failed him, and it had cost him everything as Chief Roberts climbed into her SUV and drove away. Thompson felt the weight of his choices settle deep in his gut. He had not just made a mistake. He had exposed himself. Power doesn't always come from a badge or a uniform. Sometimes, it comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for. Thompson had thought he understood justice, but now he realized that justice isn't about who holds a power. It's about how that power is used. How many people had been wronged because of his actions? How many had faced the same humiliation he had just inflicted? This story wasn't just about one bad cop making a mistake. It was about a system that allowed such mistakes to happen repeatedly. The real question was, when would it stop and who would be willing to do something about it?